Hello, I'm Italo Zanzi, Deputy General Secretary of Concacaf, and welcome to the draw for the preliminary round of the 2009-2010 Concacaf Champions League. I'm pleased to be joined today by Mary Lynn Blanks.
Thanks, Italo. I am delighted to be here with you once again at the Concacaf studios in New York City. Last year's Champions League was filled with thrilling games, a fair share of surprises, and of course, it all ended with Mexico's Atlante being crowned champions in front of their own fans. Before we proceed with the draw, let's take a look back at the first ever Concacaf Champions League. Those were truly some great moments, and I'm certain we can expect even more over the coming year. It all begins right here with the draw. So, Italo, let's get started.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. 24 teams from 10 nations, representing each of CONCACAF's 3 regions, will vie for the right to be called the club champion of CONCACAF and earn a place in the 2010 FIFA Club World Cup in Abu Dhabi. Of the 24 teams that have qualified for the CONCACAF Champions League, 8 have been directly seeded into the group stage, while 16 others will play in 8 preliminary round home and away series. The winners of those preliminary round matchups advance to the group stage, which will be comprised of 4 groups of 4 teams each. And now, let's introduce our preliminary round teams, which have been separated into 2 pots of 8 teams each.
In Pot A, Canada won Vancouver Whitecaps or Toronto FC, which will be decided next Wednesday. Mexico 3, Cruz Azul. Mexico 4, Pachuca. USA 3, New York Red Bulls. USA 4, DC United. Costa Rica 2, Liberia. Honduras, Olympia. Panama 1, Arabe Unido or San Francisco.
And in Pot B, El Salvador 2, Chalatenango. Guatemala 2, Comunicaciones or Jalapa. Panama 2, Arabe Unido or Chorrillo FC. Real España, Honduras 3, a wildcard team that replaced a team from Belize. Costa Rica 3, Herediano, another wildcard team that replaced a team from Nicaragua. CFU 1, W Connection from Trinidad and Tobago. CFU 2, the Puerto Rico Islanders from Puerto Rico. CFU 3, San Juan Joblete, also from Trinidad and Tobago. In accordance with the competition's rules, teams from the same country cannot play each other in the preliminary round. This rule, however, does not apply to the wildcard teams, Real España and Herediano. And so to determine the pairings, we will first draw a team from Pot A, and then their opponent will be drawn from Pot B. The home and away designations will be established as part of the scheduling process. And now, let's go to the draw. In order to ensure that the 2 teams from Panama do not meet in the preliminary round, Mary Lynn will remove the red ball from Pot A, which is Panama 1. Panama 1, Arabia Unido, or San Francisco. And now, let's see who Panama 1 will meet in the preliminary round. Marilyn, if you could take a ball from pot B. Excuse me. San Juan Joblete from Trinidad. And now that a team from Panama has been paired against a non-Panamanian team, in order to bring pot B back to 7 teams, Maryland will take the ball containing Panama 2 and place it into pot B. And with that done, we can move forward with the remainder of the preliminary round draw. For each of the remaining 7 pairings, we will select a team from pot A and then the opposing team from pot B. Now for our second series. Marilyn, if you'll take a ball from pot A. Pachuca of Mexico. And now a ball from pot B, please, to determine their opponent. Pachuca will play Comunicaciones or Deportivo Jalapa from Guatemala. And now for our third series, please, Maryland, from pot A. The New York Red Bulls making their Champions League debut from Major League Soccer. And to see who New York will play, a ball from pot B, please. W Connection from Trinidad, also making their Champions League debut. Now for our fourth series from pot A, please, Maryland. CD Olympia of Honduras, returning to the Champions League. And now to determine CD Olympia's opponent from pot B, please. Arabia Unido or Chorrillo FC from Panama. Now for our fifth series from pot A, please. Cruz Azul from Mexico, the finalist in this last Champions League. And to find out who will be playing Cruz Azul, Herediano from Costa Rica, making their Champions League debut. A difficult opponent for Herediano in their initial matchup. From pot A, please, Marilyn, for our sixth matchup. DC United from Major League Soccer, making a return to the Champions League and hoping to improve on their performance from this past edition. Please, if you could take a ball to determine their opponent. DC will face Chalatenango from El Salvador. And now our seventh series, please, from pot A. Liberia from Costa Rica. And to find out who Liberia will play against, Liberia will face Real España from Honduras, a wildcard team. And now for our final matchup, please. From Canada, either Toronto FC or the Vancouver Whitecaps. And to find out who will be playing against the Canadian team, Maryland, the final team, the Puerto Rico Islanders, who had a surprising and very successful showing in this past Champions League. So the preliminary round draw is now complete. To recap the pairings, Arabia Unido or San Francisco of Panama versus San Juan Joblete, Pachuca versus Comunicaciones or Jalapa, the New York Red Bulls versus W Connection from Trinidad and Tobago, Olympia of Honduras versus Arabia Unido or Chorrillo of Panama, Cruz Azul of Mexico versus Herediano of Costa Rica, DC United from the United States versus Chalatenango from El Salvador, Liberia from Costa Rica versus Real España from Honduras, and Toronto FC or the Vancouver Whitecaps from Canada versus the Puerto Rico Islanders. The first leg matches will be played between July 28th and July 30th, and the return legs between August 4th and August 6th. The winners of the preliminary round matchups will join the 8-seeded teams in the group stage. Each of the 4 groups will be comprised of the 2-seeded teams and 2 preliminary round winners. That brings to a close the Concacaf Champions League preliminary round draw. Thank you, Mary Lynn, and thank you for joining us. Hello, I'm Italo Zanzi, Deputy General Secretary of Concacaf, and welcome to the draw for the group stage of the 2009-2010 Champions League. Mary Lynn Blanks will once again assist me as we determine the groupings.
Thanks, Italo. The preliminary round draw served up many interesting pairings. The winners of the 8 preliminary round matchups will advance to the group stage, where they will be joined by the 8 teams seeded directly into the competition. These 16 teams will be drawn into 4 groups of 4 teams each.
That's right, Mary Lynn, but before we start with the group stage draw, let's go over a basic rule. Teams from the same country will be kept apart so the draw cannot produce an example where, for example, 2 teams from the United States find themselves in the same group, with the exception of the wildcard teams. Each group will consist of 1 seeded team from North America, either the United States or Mexico, 1 from Central America, and 2 preliminary round pairings. We will draw the seeded teams first. A team will be drawn from the North American pot and then from the Central American pot.
Let's take a look at the seeded teams. From North America, we have Mexico 1, Toluca, the 2008 Apertura champion, Mexico 2, Pumas, the 2009 Clausura champion, USA 1, Columbus Crew, winner of the 2008 MLS Cup, and USA 2, Houston Dynamo, the 2008 MLS Supporters Shield winner.
And from Central America, Costa Rica 1, Deportivo Saprissa, the 2008 Invierno champion, El Salvador 1, Isidro Metapan, the Apertura 2008 and Clausura 2009 champion, Guatemala 1, either Comunicaciones, the Apertura champion, or Municipal, and Honduras 1, Marathon, the 2008 Apertura champion. We will draw 2 seeded teams, 1 from North America and 1 from Central America, into each group, starting with Group A, then Group B, C, and D. And now, let's begin the draw, starting with Group A. Mary Lynn, please draw a ball from the North American pot. Houston Dynamo from the United States will play in Group A. And now let's see what team will join them from Central America. They will be joined by Isidro Metapan of El Salvador. And now let's draw Group B, a North American team. Toluca of Mexico, the Apertura champion. And let's see who will join them from Central America. Toluca will be joined by Marathon of Honduras, a quarterfinalist in the 2008-2009 Champions League. And now, Group C, a North American team. The Columbus Crew, champions of Major League Soccer. And to see who will join Columbus, please, a Central American team. Saprissa of Costa Rica, also returning to the Champions League. A team from North America for Group D, please. Pumas from Mexico, a semifinalist in the 2008-2009 Champions League and a perennial powerhouse of Mexico. And the last Central American team that will join them in Group D will be Municipal or Comunicaciones of Guatemala. So now that the 8 seeded teams have all been drawn, here are the groups as they stand. Group A, the Houston Dynamo from the United States and Isidro Metapan of Salvador. In Group B, Toluca of Mexico, joined by Marathon of Honduras. In Group C, the Columbus Crew, joined by Saprissa of Costa Rica. And finally in Group D, Pumas of Mexico, joined by a Guatemalan side, either Comunicaciones or Municipal. So now that we have the seeded teams placed, we'll draw the preliminary round pairings into the groups. First, let's review the pairings. Panama 1 versus San Juan Jablete, Pachuca versus Comunicaciones or Jalapa, the New York Red Bulls versus W Connection, Olimpia versus Arabe Unido or Chorrillo, Cruz Azul versus Herediano, DC United versus Chalatenango, Liberia versus Real España, and finally Canada 1 versus the Puerto Rico Islanders. Because teams from the same country, other than the wild cards, cannot be placed into the same group, We will first draw the pairings containing the Mexican and the U.S. teams, each of which is eligible only to be drawn into 2 of the groups. We will first draw the pairings containing the Mexican teams. These pairings cannot be drawn into groups B or D, as each already contains a Mexican team. We will now draw one pairing from pot 1 and then one group ball from pot 2. The first pairing is Cruz Azul versus Herediano of Costa Rica. And to find out what group they'll play in, Marilyn, please. They will play in Group C. And to confirm the final pairing containing a Mexican team, we pick a ball from pot 1 and then one from pot 2. Pachuca of Mexico versus either Comunicaciones or Jalapa from Guatemala. And to confirm, they will play in Group A. We will now follow the same procedure for the pairings containing teams from the United States, which can only be drawn into Groups B or Group D. Pot 1 will now be filled with the 2 pairings that contain a U.S. team. Pot 2, once again, will contain the possible groups. We will now draw one ball from the team pot and one ball from the group pot. DC United versus Chalatenango of El Salvador. And to find out what group they play in, Group B. And finally, we will confirm the last pairing and their group by picking the remaining ball from each pot. The New York Red Bulls versus W Connection. And to confirm their group, they will play in Group D. We will now draw the remaining 4 pairings into the groups. Due to the country exclusion rule, only Group A can receive all of the 4 remaining pairings. Therefore, we will first draw a pairing for Group D, then Group C, then Group B, and finally Group A. If during the course of the draw, a team is drawn into a group for which they are not eligible, they will be placed into the next group to be drawn. Under this scenario, we will then draw another team for the initial group before proceeding. We will now pick one of the 4 pairings for Group D. Marilyn? Liberia or Real España will be in Group D. And now we will pick a team for Group C. Toronto FC or Vancouver and the Puerto Rico Islanders will be in Group C. And now we will pick a team for Group B. Olympia or Arabia Unido or Chorrillo from Panama. However, Olympia cannot play in Group B because Marathon from Honduras is already there. Therefore, Olympia will be placed into Group A. And now to confirm the final team for Group B, Marilyn. The final pairing for Group B will be Arabia Unido or San Francisco of Panama or San Juan Joblete of Trinidad and Tobago. And now, let's recap the groups. In Group A, the Houston Dynamo, Isidro Metapan, Pachuca or Guatemala 2, and finally Olympia or Panama 2. In Group B, Toluca, Marathon, DC United or Chalatenango, and finally Panama 1 or San Juan Joblete. In Group C, the Columbus Crew, Saprissa, Cruz Azul or Herediano, and finally Canada 1 or the Puerto Rico Islanders. And in Group D, Pumas, Comunicaciones or Municipal, the New York Red Bulls or W Connection, and lastly, Liberia or Real España.
Teams in each group will play each other in a round-robin system totaling 6 matches per team from August 18th to October 22nd. The top 2 clubs from each group will advance to the knockout phase of the competition, playing a home and away elimination series. The quarterfinals will be played in March of 2010. The semifinals begin on the last day of March, and the finals will take place in late April.
Thank you. This concludes the draw for the 2009-2010 Concacaf Champions League group stage. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the games.